Today is Friday, February 12th, and you're listening to the 59th broadcast of TBR Radio Presents, the TBR History Hour. My name is Dr. Ed DeVries. I'm a contributing editor at TBR, and for the next hour, I'll be your host as I talk with Rachel Pendergraft. Rachel is a leader in the YouthCore. She's a well-known media personality, and she has the unique distinction of having grown up as the daughter of one of the nationally prominent leaders of the Klan. And so what she's going to talk to us today are a number of things. Among them is why she does not believe that the Klan is a hate group. Also, she's going to talk about how those who would perpetrate acts of hate in the name of the Klan, that they're not only basically not actually members of the Klan. They're not actually, in other words, I guess you could call it renouncing that. And so it's going to be an interesting conversation that we're going to have with Rachel today. And so you'll want to stay tuned. And so one of the things that's always impressed me about you is, from what I'm seeing on the internet and from what I'm hearing, talking to people around the country, is you may be doing more than anybody else in America right now, teaching the next generation, starting with your own children and also, teaching the next generation, teaching our young people, teaching our teenagers that it's okay. And it's not just okay, it's admirable to love your people, to love your heritage, because all of the other elements of the world right now are coming at them, telling them that they need to reject their heritage, that they need to feel guilty because of their heritage, and you're pretty much leading a youth movement, getting that message out that no, the world is wrong, and your heritage is noble, and you should be proud of it, and you should continue it into the next generation yourself.
Well, I just we've always felt it was very, very important to to teach the like you said, to teach the next generation. And one thing that my father and mother always passed on to us was that one of the greatest tools being used against our people is the fact that they've stolen our heroes from us. That's why, it's so important that we keep our monuments and we have a way to connect to our heritage and to our past. And, recognize not everybody in the past has always lived up to, the ideals. People are people, and they're not perfect. But, our enemy has denigrated all the men and women of our past, our Christian heroes, our patriotic heroes, our literary heroes. They've denigrated all of these. And I recall reading an article from a professor in Texas a few years ago, and someone had asked him about race and his classroom and his students and so forth, and he recalled a young white person coming up to him at one point when they were having a discussion on culture, and he said, well, I just don't feel like we have a culture, because so often all we hear is, black people can dance and Asians are so smart and white people are just, like we're just losers that have done nothing but, brought, horrors on the world and imperialism and all this type of stuff. And so our young people are like made to feel ashamed of their heritage. And what person in their right mind wants to fight something or fight for something that they have been told is awful? And so how can we get young people, the next generation, to want to salvage their heritage and to promote their culture and to promote Christianity and good family values if all they've been told their entire life is that it's just a bunch of garbage? And so retaining our heroes and promoting them and teaching them about their history is just such a vital aspect of winning, as they say, the culture war. And unfortunately, a lot of times, growing up in the patriotic cause or whatever you want to call it, there's so many names out there for it. But just growing up in this general patriotic cause, Christian revival movement, I like to refer to. A lot of times we just see people or conferences or newsletters or podcasts, and everybody just they just concentrate on what is terrible and what our enemy is doing, and always look for solutions like right now. Everybody wants like the quick fix, and we didn't get into any of this trouble overnight. It's multi-generational. And so, unfortunately, there's older people here alive today that may not see a turn for our people. And they can't be selfish about wanting the quick fix now. They need to pray to God that we can raise up a new generation of young people who can lead their families and their communities and raise good children and just build that spiritual community with others, so that we can withstand trouble that comes ahead, and that we can renew the spirits of our communities. And that just all comes back to families and to children. And I know sometimes people kind of it seems and I don't mean this in the wrong way, but sometimes growing up in this, it seems like some people's like this fight is just like it's a man's fight. We're gonna. I think I mentioned this to you the other day, but I hear people talk about we have to save the family, and I totally honor and love manly men that will stand up for their families. But we also have to remember that it's building the family itself. It's that nuclear structure of a mom and a dad and well-trained children that is going to help propel our people forward. And the wife and the children can't just be, sidekicks. They need to be involved in the family and involved in this fight. And when children are raised to see their mom and dad having a deep faith and commitment for their nation, for their faith and so forth, and that's something that they can make a part of themselves. And it's not just a hobby that mom and dad had. We're Confederates, or we were bikers on the weekend, or we went to the craft fair. It wasn't just like a hobby. It's like something you breathe, and it's like oxygen for your soul. And that's what kids need. And that's kind of been our viewpoint of just really focusing on family and just making it about the family and raising that next generation so that they can be teachers for their own children, because as we all know, the best way to learn any subject is to learn how to teach it. And when you teach it to others, and when they can teach it to their children and make it a part of their lives, then it helps cement those feelings and thoughts and attitudes into themselves. And so you're right. It's very, very important. And that's, just something that we've really focused on over the years in everything that we do.
Open your web browser and type in www.barnesreview.org and discover the Barnes Review magazine. In the Barnes Review, you will read vignettes of man, from the prehistoric to the very recent, from forgotten races and civilizations to first-person accounts of World War II and the late Cold War. There is no more interesting magazine published today, nor a more significant and important subject than real history. So visit www.barnesreview.org and subscribe to the Barnes Review. You can subscribe to receive the Barnes Review magazine in its print form, or in convenient electronic delivery. Our host has been a subscriber to both formats for years. So visit www.barnesreview.org and subscribe to the Barnes Review.
The other day I was interviewing the Commander General of the Military Order of the Stars and Bars, and I do not know if that interview will air before this one we're doing now, or if it will air after the fact, so our listeners may or may not have already heard this information.
Mm-hmm.
But what he said was that the average age, and he's in his 80s, and he said the average age of their membership was, I believe he said 73.
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
means that there aren't any young people in that organization.
Yeah,
So,
and yeah, that's unfortunate.
yeah. So, how are young people responding to your efforts? Because it's not that organizations like the Military Order of the Stars and Bars or the Sons of Confederate Veterans aren't trying. I can remember,
Right.
and this was 15 years ago, speaking and helping to be one of the directors of what were called the Sam Davis Youth Camps.
Mm-hmm.
And, the effort was being made to reach out to that next generation. The response, some of the young people responded, some of them didn't. But how are young people responding to you and your outreach efforts towards them?
Well, I feel that we get a pretty good response. We have a youth core. We don't have meetings. First off, I don't want to use the word paranoid, but we're very, very careful with young people. We know that there's enemies out there that would love to get a list of young people's, email accounts or cell phone numbers or things like that. So we don't have meetings. We don't put them in touch together. But we do have a YouthCore private website where they're able to communicate with staff members at the national office to kind of mentor them and so forth. And then we have some curriculum for them and different things that they can do to be involved and learn more about their heritage and so forth. And so that seems to be something that young people are migrating toward. But really, and I think we might discuss this a little bit down the road here, but really, some people I know over the years have given us some flack over the use of the name, of the Klan name, and I recognize, and we have always recognized that there is baggage that comes along with that name. However, when you look at the average young person, and just the fact that most young people are in the public school system, they have this onslaught of diatribes just against their heritage and their people. But interestingly enough, we get so many young people, whether in history classes, sociology classes, junior high, civic classes, college students, and so forth, that seem to be fascinated with the name. And so we do just a ton of student interviews. And I know I had someone here a couple of years ago say, I don't know why you waste your time with that. They're just students doing a school report. You don't even know if they like you or not. We've had a lot of young people who, 20 years later, when they have their own children, or contact us back, and they'll be like, I did a student interview with you for my history class when I was 15, and you just as I start to see things in the world kind of take shape, and I remember back to the interview or the fact that you were kind to us and so forth, that you made sense, and now they have children of their own, and they're like kind of rethinking things. But just, young people even today, they are again fascinated with the name, and when they see, the young people, you kind of have them split, because, you get some that they don't know how to cope in the world when it's so anti-white and everything is just pushing them towards this multi-racial, multi-gendered culture and so forth. And so some of them, I think, subconsciously, they kind of joined that club just out of a survival mechanism. But then there's others that deep down inside, they begin to resent this onslaught of stuff being thrown at them. And with the fascination with the name, it's just really, it seems like it's something that they know that the Klan and white people, whatever trash talk they've heard about it, the Klan in the past, there's one thing that they know, and they know that it has something to do with standing up for white people. And so it's easy for them to get in touch with us. Still a very good advertising mechanism. And once they are able to get in touch with us, and join the YouthCore and so forth, then we're able to work with them and teach them some new history, or revive some old history that they haven't been taught. And just, work with them as far as, our website. We have all types of stuff about, we have a section for girls and a section for boys, and things on just, building character and modesty and being heroic in their own life, and what, how to handle situations if they're living in a home where their parents are themselves anti-white, and how to conduct themselves in school when they're, learning all these so-called evil facts about history and so forth, and just, kind of, because, young people don't necessarily have to be out. I know liberals really like to get young people out there and, as the term is, radicalize them and get them out there in the streets and protesting and so forth. But, we want to concentrate more on their spirit and on giving them a good level field, a good grounding, so that, in a few more years as they mature, that, hopefully we've imparted some very useful information for them, given them some new way to look at life, given them some new heroes to emulate other than, the latest basketball player or something, and help them to learn to critically think and dissect the anti-white propaganda that they witness every day, and help give them some tools to become teachers themselves someday, whether it's with, their friends or their own family members or their future spouses or children. And, to me, and when we get a lot of emails in from young people, and here last year at one of our conferences, I took a stack of the emails and just read some of the emails off to the audience, because I was just like really, really proud of really the insight and the idealism of so many of these young people, because, of all the contact and emails and just heartfelt messages that we get, very, very rarely does someone say, hey, I want to be a part of the YouthCore because I hate black people, or I hate this, or, they're like really thoughtful, really heartfelt messages, like, I really hate what they're doing to our country, or, I just, I want to have a better country. I want to have a nice family someday, or, maybe I see my parents struggling in the neighborhood we're in, or, I don't like, the teaching that I get at school, and I've started to look around and kind of read things for myself, and just, really, this girl last week wrote, and she said, I want to grow up one day, and hopefully I can find a nice husband and homeschool some kids. And she said, I've been looking into that, and I just want to, help do my part. And it's like, it seems like a lot of people kind of put down young people sometimes. Like, they're either going to be like used, like the liberals are going to take young people and use them as tools in their little Antifa wars, or maybe they're just kind of discounted as, well, they're not adults yet, But, one thing that I've always found, really satisfying about Christianity and evangelism and so forth is that, Jesus looked at young people and little children as, they're very much a part of the kingdom. And when young people, especially white young people who have been told that they come from a worthless culture, when they're valued and they're shown the value in their culture, in their history, I think it's something that they just really soak up. and I think it means a lot to them. And so I think it's the value that we place on them. It's the whole enchilada. It's their fascination with the name to help kind of direct them towards us. It's the mentoring that we try to do and the time we try to spend with them, and just the value that we place in them. And I know that a lot of other people, I know other people place value in them, and there's a lot of great organizations and great people out there. But it's just something that we've been working at for a long time. And sometimes it seems like it's a slow process, but the darker times get, it just seems like more young people are hungry for answers and hungry for something different than what they've been given in the schools.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
If you're like me, and I'll bet you are, you like to be on the cutting edge of honest news and accurate information. 26 times a year, the American Free Press newspaper can be delivered to your door, packed with the kind of uncensored news that I know you're going to appreciate. If you're ever dissatisfied with your subscription to the American Free Press, their guarantee is that you just drop them an email and they will gladly refund the unused portion of your subscription. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.americanfreepress.net. Once again, www.americanfreepress.net. And find out about the American Free Press. Do it today.
Extra, extra, read all about
One thing that you hinted at a moment ago in one of the letters from one of the young ladies, and something that I've even heard you say on other media venues, and something that I've read on your website and so forth, is that loving your own folk or supporting your own people does not require hating other people. Right. So, for all the people out there that would, call what you're doing hate or a hate group, or, all of the criticism that you've gotten.
Right. Well, it's very sad that, people think that, it reminds me of Isaiah 5, where it says, those who call evil, good, and good evil are as good as dead. And, don't turn the darkness into light and light into darkness. And it's just so prophetic to what we're seeing, even today in our own times, because, we are, we're like the ultimate love group, we have a really deep, profound love for our people. And if you focus on hating another race, if you focus on the bad and focus on the darkness and so forth, then that's what's going to end up consuming you. And you don't, and then once you're consumed by hate, then that becomes the primary focus and factor in your life. And then, all of your actions are done out of hatred instead of, the properly being motivated by love for your people and for your heritage and your kinfolk and so forth. And plus, if you rely on hate as a motivation for your actions, then it's very easy for a person or an organization to become reactionary. And once you become reactionary, then you're not thinking straight. And, we're really living in some pretty desperate times. And it just really kills my heart to see sometimes people on the internet, or maybe some news story where, somebody, went out and did some graffiti, or they beat up some black guy, or they're trying to attempt their own little coup or something like this, and they think that it's like real manly to like be violent. And all that does is, one, it just really brings down the eyes of the federal government upon organizations, upon people, upon just the entire culture of white Christianity or patriotism, or, the movement, or whatever you want to call it. And that really is a grave disservice to all of us, because, we want to focus, and I know there's so many great people out there and so many great groups and organizations that really truly are focused on loving their heritage and loving God and loving their people and trying to fight for a brighter future. And I think, how dare some imbecile somewhere who's just ratched by hatred for whatever reason think that their actions somehow are going to, I don't know, help or facilitate any revival of our people or any type of rise in the consideration and consciousness of our people towards a better future. I mean, I don't know who these people think they are, and it really angers me, because if especially when some of these people, claim to be Christians, it's like if you claim to be a Christian and you think somehow that you can win this fight without Christ or without proper leading or just by being reactionary and I'm going to be the one to get the ball rolling, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I just hear some really silly things out there sometimes, out on the web. And it really is sad because it destroys the work and effort of so many fine people out there, just really good ladies and gentlemen who are fighting for our future in a proper context. And, our organization, I know that sometimes, people look at the name and they think, oh, it's just about hate. But we're the farthest thing from that imaginable, And I'm really, really proud of our organization because, we have been able to build a really good, solid reputation, even among law enforcement and the government and so forth. Because I've been witnesses for law enforcement officers and who have been terminated or something because of their beliefs and so forth. And I've has been very pleased to. I haven't done this in a few years, but based on a free speech platform, I was invited to lecture at the FBI National Academy in Quantico, outside of D.C. there in Virginia, numerous times over 7 or 8 years. And I was given a 2-hour spot to discuss anything I wanted to discuss. So, I talked about, basically all the things that we're talking about now. And we have special newspapers for law enforcement because I believe that law and order is the hallmark of our people, of civilization. And just to let them know that we are on the side of law and order. And we're not some of those crazy people out there that are, like I said, trying to get the ball rolling or think that violence or hate or something like that is the answer. So we've worked really hard to build a really good, solid reputation. And I think that more people are beginning to see that just in general. And, hopefully we can do our part in redeeming the Klan name because it was such a powerful vehicle in the South towards the survival of the Southern people. And it's been a very effective organizing tool throughout the country for numerous years. And unfortunately, sometimes you get bad apples in the organizations. I'm very pleased that we haven't ever had to experience or deal with any of that, but that's just because we make our agenda very well known. Like the schools say, we have a zero tolerance policy, when it comes to even hinting at hate or violence or anything like that. And so hopefully our organization has done its part in redeeming the Klan name because, as I mentioned with the young people, the name is so fascinating to so many people. And, you could go to an Eskimo in Alaska that hasn't had a TV for 20 years, maybe, summer sometime in some village or something. I mean, the point is, the name is so universal. I mean, just worldwide, people know what the Klan name is, and they might have heard good things, they might have heard bad things, but they know that it's an organization that stands for white culture. And if they know that, like they say in any political campaign, the first job is to be noticed, to have your name out there. They can't listen to your beliefs and listen to your arguments and what you have to say if they've never heard of you. And so, we have stuck it out for years and years with the name, and because we just believe, personally, I believe it's God ordained. I believe that the Klan, saved the South at that very dark time in history, and I believe it's going to be a vehicle to help resurrect our people again. And it's not about hate. It's about motivating our people, loving our people, cherishing our heritage, loving our people, trying to help build community. And I don't mean some little cult community somewhere. I mean a spiritual community of like-minded men and women and families that can just come together as part of the body of Christ and help to move our people forward and give them some hope, because our people need hope. And a couple bad things that can happen if you don't have hope, then that can lead a person to become radicalized, or they think that violence is the only answer, because it's kind of like the ancient zealots. It's like, well, we have no chance to win, so we might as well take as many as the enemy down with us as we can as we go down, and so we want to give people hope and let them know that the experiences that our people are suffering from right now, I truly believe, I know many others do also, believe that it's part of divine judgment. Our people have neglected themselves. They've neglected their heritage. They've allowed themselves to become deceived. They didn't fight against things that they should have fought against, whether it's, the taking the prayer out of schools or the abortion or things, just so many cultural issues and so forth. And I know there are people out there that have, but, I feel like our people just kind of slowly, slid away and just kind of had this kind of doom and gloom type feeling and lost hope. And so our people need that hope again. And they need to know that, also that hope is only in Jesus Christ. And there's a lot of fine people out there that, are working for white people and working against white genocide and so forth. But, they need to remember that the number one hope is in Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ is the author of love. And he's the one that commands us to love God with all our heart and mind and soul, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And we have to love our racial kinfolk, and we have to start putting them first, and putting them first in our prayers and in our lives, and really becoming a community again. And I think once our people can start, doing that, and I see a real strong move towards that, now in recent years, as the pressure and the heat gets harder, on our people. I think it's helping to facilitate a process of looking inward in our own lives and the lives of our families, our communities, and start asking, maybe our people are under some sort of judgment. And, I always like to recall, our founding fathers and, and those old Puritan, heroes of the past, when they had something terrible happen in their community or to the nation, I mean, they'd number one, they declare a time of prayer and a time of fasting. And they would look and ask, what have we done? What have we done? Not what the enemy has done, not what the black guy down the street has done, but what have we done? How have we neglected our spiritual life? How have we, neglected the laws of God? How have we neglected our families? What have we done? And I think our people need to, start doing that more. And, I hope that our organization can be a vehicle to help people to begin looking and using our organization perhaps as a compass to help look more towards themselves and ask, what have we done, and how can we get closer to God, and how can we put our hope in God and not get trapped by some sort of, fascination with hate or blaming everybody else, but, looking at ourselves and doing what we can to fix our lives and to fix our communities and our nation ourselves with the reliance on God. And so, no, our organization is definitely not about hate at all. And like I said, I think we're just an ultimate love group. And I don't see anything wrong with some good, healthy indignation against the enemies that want to kill our babies and destroy our families and euthanize the elderly and offer our children 32 different genders to choose from. So there's nothing wrong with some good, healthy indignation. That is, I think, a very important aspect of a Christian's life. You can't just tolerate evil. So, that's not what I'm saying. But just to have some sort of hate for other people or other races, that just doesn't get anybody anywhere at all.
Open your web browser and type in www.barnesreview.org and discover the Barnes Review magazine. In the Barnes Review, you will read vignettes of man, from the prehistoric to the very recent, from forgotten races and civilizations to first-person accounts of World War II and the late Cold War. There is no more interesting magazine published today, nor a more significant and important subject than real history. So visit www.barnesreview.org and subscribe to the Barnes Review. You can subscribe to receive the Barnes Review magazine in its print form, or in convenient electronic delivery. Our host has been a subscriber to both formats for years. So visit www.barnesreview.org and subscribe to the Barnes Review.
What is it that drew you into, we'll call this, the movement? I mean, you were a young girl, obviously. Your father was a leader in the movement, Pastor Thomas Robb. He was a leader in the movement. But at some point, you were I would assume a teenager. Maybe you were in your early 20s. And you've got a choice to make. Either you believe the things that you were raised in, or you're going to rebel against them. Obviously, you chose a husband who was... who is like-minded in these things, or maybe he chose you. I don't know. But in other words, there were choices to make as a young person, and you could have married somebody who was the exact opposite of the life that you're living in, the movement that you're leading now, or you could have embraced the things you were taught as a young woman and as a child and pursued the course that you did. So what is it that made you make that decision?
And I've been asked that by numerous reporters before. Sometimes I kind of get the idea that they're looking for like the aha moment, and it's interesting. And I know I've talked to other people, and sometimes there is that kind of decision, whether to go with what you've been taught or forge your own path, so to say. But I never, I really never had that moment. And I think it's because, and this is something that, I want to emphasize to other people out there with their children or grandchildren or future children. It's just it was our family environment. First off, me and my brothers, we traveled with their parents everywhere. Traveled with my dad on his speaking tours and stuff, and met a lot of great, wonderful people growing up. But it was like it wasn't like, oh, this is, oh, Dad's in the Klan, he's the leader in the Klan. It was like our family, it was like our family culture. Rolling up newspapers to go on a literature distribution, back before the internet,
Right.
Going to conferences and not being like, oh, you're the kids, go play. It's like, no, we went to conferences, we were like in there listening, taking notes. And just it was like our family. Sometimes people have like a personal mission statement, and it was like our family mission. So it wasn't like something Dad did or Mom did, but it was like part of our family mission. I mentioned sometimes to people that before my parents moved out here to Arkansas from Arizona, we were in Tucson, living near the Air Force Base. And this was back when I was just like, 1 or 2 years old. But my mom carried me on her back on a picket line when I was about 6 months old, because she and my father went down to picket against the demonstrators that were there. Basically, there's Vietnam vets coming back, some of them in like wheelchairs or crippled and, missing a leg or an arm or something like that. And my mom would drive by there during some of these homecomings and was just like totally incensed with some of these hippies out there throwing chicken blood at the soldiers, calling them baby murderers, baby rapists. Just, here's like young men that just, coming back physically wounded and mentally wounded. And here's these like dirty hippies out there just, throwing feces at them, just being terrible, terrible. And so my mom and dad organized some tickets to go out and, welcome home type stuff like that, to help give some encouragement. And so my mom carried me on her back for some of those. And then also in LA, they had a march against the United Nations. And so my mom carried me on that. And so I did the same thing with my kids, when we were doing rallies and different things. And I know some people were like, you're crazy, taking your kids. It's like, that's the best thing in the world, is to take your kids to stuff. Now, obviously with some of the, Antifa and stuff like that, I wouldn't put my kids in that type of harm's way. But we always did, organized our rallies very professionally with good security and logistics and so forth. So I was not putting my children in harm's way. But as they were growing up, and this is how I was raised, we were growing up, it was like part of our family mission. And I just always thought it was really cool, And I never hid the fact, from, I went to public school. I never hid the fact from any of my schoolmates or anything like that. My dad was always in the newspaper for one thing or another, some rally or a speech somewhere or something. And so they're very familiar with my family's politics and stuff. It never caused any issues whatsoever. I never felt the need to try to defend myself. I never, felt the need to perhaps find something, some belief system that wasn't as, trying to think of a good word, that wasn't as sensational. It was just something that I felt, and it was because of my parents that I just felt was right. And I also, my parents, they loved to read, and so they put that love into me, and I just love to read. And I'll read just about anything that I can get my hands on. other than, like pornography or stuff like that. I've never read romance novels or anything like that, but I like to read like information and history. So I will read something that's pro-American, and I'll read something that's Marxist. And I've been like that all growing up, and everything that I read, and everything I read just went back to like make everything that I was learning in my home. It's just like, yeah, it all clicks. I hear this about Marxists, I read it in their own written words. Um, it's just something that I could never ever imagine not believing the way that I believe. So I never really had an aha moment. It was just part of my family and part of my culture and part of me. And so it wasn't like my parents believed this and, well, what do I think? It was just like, that's who I am. And that's, kind of what I want parents to think about with their own kids, because I've talked to a lot of parents over the years, and we always stress, hey, get your kids involved, and that means you have to be involved also. Make it part of your family's culture, make it a part of your family's mission, of bringing, our family's mission, was, bringing hope and deliverance to white Christian America, bringing them some hope, reminding them that Jesus Christ can deliver them. And then, spring off from there into, other subjects, because people need to have some knowledge also. So that's just the way I was raised. And my husband was great. He was interested in the Klan. I met him. He came down from Iowa to attend college there in Branson, and he thought the
Did he go to college at the Ozarks?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was one of my top 5 college choices. Of the 5 colleges that I actually visited when I was in high school,
mm-hmm.
College of the Ozarks was number 3 on that list, and there's part of me that wishes I would have gone there.
Well, unfortunately, it's still a good college, but they're getting pretty not liberal in the sense of like liberal, but I haven't been up there in probably a year or so. But sometimes if we're up there, we'll just drive through the campus just because it's a pretty campus. But so that's just the way I was raised. That's what parents need to do with their own children, because it's sad to me when I there's some parents that maybe I've known for 20 or 30 years, and I see them get married and I see them have kids, and then I'm always like checking in, like, how are your kids and what are you guys doing, and won't you do a letter writing campaign in your community, or pass out some flyers, or have a little home Bible study, or just this, there's like so many things that people can do to just be actively engaged. It's like, well, we don't really have the time. Or I had this one guy say, well, when my daughter doesn't have any idea that we're even involved, and when she gets to be older, then we'll let her make her own decision. I'm like, what? Since when do parents let their kids make their own decision? I mean, that's not. I don't know. I just don't think that's some new age deal. You don't let your kids make. I mean, let them decide what shirt they want to wear to school or whatever. But I mean, there's just certain things you don't let your kids make their own decision. You guide them and train them so they'll someday make the right decision. But anyway, so
I'm going to make some of our listeners mad right now. But I know that you've had to deal with this, and so maybe you can give us the insight. You take a beautiful young lady.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some people that are overly obsessed with tattoos.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And why would you want to take a beautiful young lady and mutilate her skin? I mean, we
Right.
make such a big deal about being white. Why would we want to mutilate that beautiful whiteness?
Yeah, I don't have any tattoos. I've never had the desire or felt the need to get a tattoo. It's just like, plus when you get old, I mean, what's that? Where is that
Yeah.
tattoo going to end up at?
Yeah. So what do you tell these young white girls, or even some of these young white men, for that matter?
Well, other than just, I try not to get real preachy about it, because, while I don't like it, and I don't think it's something that really helps facilitate doesn't help facilitate anything other than just mess your skin up and cost money. One of the biggest things to me is, these people, they kind of spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on these tattoos, I mean, can you imagine if all the people who say they are on our side and believe like us and love our heritage and want to save our monuments and on and on and on. Man, if they put the money they spend on tattoos into the movement, maybe everybody'd have some better equipment. maybe people could do more. Maybe we could get more billboards. Maybe, people could go on more speaking tours, maybe we could have, our own, internet server companies, it's like, it's really, it does kind of anger me. And then, like I said, I try not to get real preachy about it, because I don't, I'm trying to look more at a spiritual renewal. But I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't know why people feel the need to get tattooed up. It's not anything that I find noble or inspiring at all. But
I mean, I understand. Say, for example, you're an inmate in a prison, and you need to be able to send a message to every other inmate that you walk past, what group you run with or whatever. But
yeah,
but for those of us in the rest of the world,
right? Yeah, yeah, and and plus, to me, it's more. Now, I don't know. I haven't really studied it that much myself. I know I've heard some people say that maybe the Vikings did tattoos. I've never seen any evidence of that. I mean, to me, it goes back to just a African continental type deal, or it's definitely not a white, historically white practice that I'm aware of. And so it's just emulating other cultures other than our own. And so I don't see the point in it. And so many people, they make it a big priority, and and then they end up getting sleeved and stuff. So yeah, I don't find it really very dignified. And that'll probably tick off some of your listeners out there. So that's why I said I don't want to get too preachy about it. I mean, some people, hey, you've already got the tattoos. I guess there's really nothing you can do about it. I guess you could remove them, but yeah, I'll definitely emphasize, don't get more tattoos. Don't start getting tattoos if you haven't. I don't really find anything noble about it. It's definitely not helping our people. It's not helping our culture or race at all. And then the money that they spend on it is ridiculous. I think a person's priorities and their real true desires in life a lot of times can be gauged by what they spend their money on. And if they're spending their money on alcohol, tattoos, and cigarettes, and they're not spending their money on good books and spending their money on doing something to help our cause, then, they've got their priorities all mixed up, and they need some real heartfelt discussions with God on the subject.
So you host two big conferences every year in Harrison, Arkansas. Tell us just briefly about those two conferences.
Yes, so we have the Faith and Freedom Conference in the spring, and then we have what we call the National Conference and Family Retreat on Labor Day weekend. Both of them, I think, are great. We always have a lot of great speakers. We hosted at the SOTC Bible Camp, which is 15 miles outside of Harrison. It's on 100 acres. We have a real nice venue for the conference. The people come and camp there. We have men's and women's cabins for those that want to, stay in those. We're close to motels and hotels. And plus this whole area, sometimes people like to plan like a family vacation around the conference so they can do some sightseeing and stuff around in the area. We're near the Buffalo River and so forth. But we try to make it, a family conference, So the family, wants to come. So it's not just, all sitting down and listening to dry lectures all weekend. We have entertainment and it's beautiful. The grounds are beautiful and the stuff for kids to do. And we have Bible classes and heritage classes for kids and nice playground. And we have workshops and, we have our camp kitchen there with all our food is prepared there by our own people who can trust the food and everything. It's just a really great weekend. At the end of it, Steve Kukla, who's an entertainer and evangelist, always sings beautifully. He has a great voice. Sings the Old Rugged Cross, and so it's just a real solemn, memorable experience. But
Steve and I lived together for 91 days in Indianapolis, Indiana. Of course, that was a number of years ago, but totally transformed my life.
Well, he's a very, very fine man. Him and his wife Bonnie, they are always at our conferences. Of course, they sing and entertain, and he speaks and so forth. And so, yeah, we have different speakers all the time. The conference in the fall will have a little bit more night's party business as far as, a few things that are specific to the organization. But again, it's all family. We have a nice nursery, so, we encourage any young mothers who are worried about coming with their babies. We have a nice nursery for them, very comfortable. We have the kids' corner where kids can go and do crafts and have lessons and so forth. And we have a nice, bonfire during the weekend. And I just very, very laid back, like, kind of like an old-fashioned Bible camp, back in the day. And so, yeah, we encourage people to come and to bring their kids and don't make it a weekend just to get away from the wife and kids or for mom and dad to get away from the kids. And don't ask your kids if they want to come. Just say, hey, we're going, everybody get in the car, pack your stuff, and come. And, let your kids hang out with other people or maybe, single people might meet their spouse at the conference. I mean, I don't know. We just are really focused on family and that multi-generational deal. We have old people there, up in their late 80s, and we have babies there and all ages in between. And so, it's just really nice to get away and not have to worry about a bunch of protesters or things like that. Just a beautiful weekend in the Ozarks around like-minded people and other families that are all dedicated towards the same goal. And so, yeah, I would encourage people to come, highly encourage it.
Cut it off here because we are just about out of time for today's TBR Radio Presents, the TBR History Hour. But Rachel and I's conversation had continued, and it's been recorded, and I'll be sharing a little bit more of it with you next week on my other show, TBR Radio Presents, the Dixie Heritage Show, because Rachel's talking about how they're opening up a museum in Harrison, Arkansas. It will be a Southern Heritage Museum. One of the artifacts that's going to be in that museum, interestingly enough, is going to be the personal Bible of Willis Carto. Those of you who have been around the TBR universe for any period of time, of course, know that TBR Radio, the Barnes Review Magazine, the American Free Press, TBR Press, and so forth, were the brainchilds and the creations of the genius that was the late Dr. Willis Carto. And
Rachel's father preached Willis's funeral, which was something that I did not realize. And Rachel was at that funeral and was given a Willis's personal Bible by Elizabeth Carto, the widow of Willis Carto. And that's going to be placed in this Southern and American Heritage Museum. And so we're going to be talking about that next week, next Friday, on TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Show. So you'll want to stay tuned. In the meantime, go to www.barnesreview.org, www.barnesreview.org. You can click the radio tab, go to the TBR Radio Archives, listen to back episodes of both this show and the Dixie Heritage Show. Also, you can go to the TBR bookstore, and if you're not a subscriber to TBR Magazine, you can become one, because TBR Magazine is, without a doubt, the best revisionist history magazine in print anywhere in the world today. Anyways, we are out of time, so we will be back again next week, same time, same place. But until then, from all of us here at TBR Radio, God bless, and I look forward to talking to you again next week.